What's up everyone, this is Ellis. Today we're here finally back in the studio and I'm going to run through the remix that I did for Zedd and Jasmine Thompson today. It's a little bit complicated. We've got 4 different projects and one of which is Ableton. But I'm going to try my best to run through everything for you and show you how I did it. I did a few versions of this remix, but this is the one that I settled on in the end, this kind of future Daft Punk vibe, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, let's just go straight into it. This is the Breaks project. So this is how I started it. I started it out with just the vocals here and some chords. And then once I tried a few drops down here, over here, but none of them worked. So I just went into another new project, which we'll go into in a bit. But let's just start with the basics. So we've got these like Juno-esque chords here. And this is a preset, I think, from the Oliver packet, just slightly edited. Just some nice warm saw chords. And then to make it sound a little bit more lo-fi, we've just got this M vibrato plugin on there. Without it. With it. It just adds a bit of wobble to it. It makes it sound a little bit more tapey. We're automating the EQ here, so what I'm doing is just once the bass comes in, which I'll show you in a minute, I'm just EQing out everything from about 100 hertz ish, 92. I use this touch over here, which is where you kind of click what you want to change, and then maybe it just turn those on. Never mind. Moving on. We've got this kind of drone pad, which this is from another project that I was playing around with the vocal, and I just exported this because I liked it and dragged it in. Super simple stuff. We've got these shells here. My mate Louis sent me these years ago. It's just some shell things, I guess. Just really good for like ambient textures. Just fills up that space because there really isn't much going on here. Got this little guitar. All I've got on that is just a little H delay. It's just making it a little bit wider and just kind of sitting it amongst this ambience here. Little EQ, just getting rid of the low end, and that's it. We've got these claps that I exported from the remix I did for Noted, which if you want to see how I did those, head over to the video I released a few weeks ago. Hi-hats. Drum-wise as well. A little bit more. We've got these shakers, another shaker, one hard left and one hard right. These are live shakers, little cymbal transition, and then this little ambience thing here. Just bends up. Also exported this from a very old project. And then just to make these chords sound a little bit bigger in the pre-chorus, I layered them with these two here. This booky top chord. So this is just, if I just take everything off, pretty horrible whirly sound. Added a bit of OTT to it, an EQ, reverb, and then this is where the magic happens in this plugin here. It basically just degrades the audio quality of any sound, and especially when you've got reverb behind it, it sounds pretty cool. We've got a chorus, just making it wider, another EQ, getting rid of the mud, and then again is probably just for volume purposes. Then we've got this, just a piano. Again, this piano V2 plugin, I use this quite a lot. Japanese wide's really nice for kind of just soft, big sounding pianos. And then the cool bit, this is where I just started jamming along. So this is just me playing on my bass. So the reason this looks like a bunch of chopped up audio is just because I would have literally been jamming along to these chords, done like 10 takes, and then taken the best parts of each of those and just added them together, because I was trying to make this remix as quickly as possible as well. And this bass just sounds great. It's a really warm sounding bass. It's not the Fender that I usually use, But it's actually my dad's old bass. It's called an Aria Pro, I think. So if you want one of those, go and check it. I don't think they sell them anymore. But processing wise, just got a CLA bass, and all this is doing is really compressing it with this wall preset here and adding a few sub frequencies there. EQ doing nothing, great. And then this FabFilter Pro C. And as you can see there, this is basically a compressor that's side chaining the bass to a kick drum. And the kick drum is here. And then to kind of get that side chain to work perfectly, I've basically just duplicated that kick down and then made it really, really short. So we just have the attack of the kick, almost just like a signal. And I've just given it no output, and then I'm sending that audio signal to the compressor. And that means I have full control over what I want the sidechain to sound like. And then just to fill up that section, literally just some percussions, the kicks obviously, and then all the rest of the drums. And then we go into a different part completely, out of this ambient section into this big, almost like EDM-y section. Just really wanted to give some power. And the difficult thing here is that it then goes into the major like tonic first chord, which is not in the original. So the vocal doesn't actually follow this melody completely, which is why here I duplicated it down on this section. And I just flex pitched the notes leading into that section. I don't know if I can show you this, but yeah, I'm literally moving that probably up one semitone, I think, if you listen here. It's funny. It's funny. Without. It's funny. With. It's funny. And then that kind of blends nicely into that major tonic chord. Because I really wanted to just change this up from the original. So then, yes, we go into the chords, and that's this stack here. So we go into the main kind of chords, which is just me duplicating the original like Juno preset from Serum and just opening up the cutoff so it sounds bigger. And then to get that filter effect, I'm actually just using a high cut frequency on this bus here. Automating that down. And then there I'm filtering it out again. And then back up in the build. Endless smile just to make it go into the distance. Super cool little trick. Yeah, also just removing the low end right before the drop so that the low end comes straight back in the drop and it sounds more powerful. And then I'm layering these Juno chords with this super sorry, noisy synth. This is from Gladiator. This synth is insane. I only got it recently and I'm loving it. Great for these sort of sounds. And then of course we've just got bass from Massive. Lot of weight in that bass. And then the bass does this really cool little fancy lick here. Together, they're being sent to that bus, and it's just some EQ here that's just doing the automation, which I showed you, and then again a Pro C, which is just being used to sidechain it to these kick drums down here. We've got this string drone that comes in just to add a bit of tension, and then I'm chopping up the vocal here and just pitching it as well. And then on here, just to make it sound super ambient and spacey, we've got all these plugins. Lossy again, brilliant plugin. EQ, tremolo, I think that's just going, yeah, making it go left to right. H delay, just basically all of these plugins are making it feel really spaced out and away from everything that's supposed to be right in your face, like the chords and stuff. Also being sidechained, got a string, disco. Then we've just got the drums down here. So we've got these crashes. Got a reverse crash there. And then these toms here. And I didn't feel like those toms were cutting through as much, so I just layered them with these other toms together. Got a nice little build going on. We've got the guitars from the original. Snare. Some percussion, the shakers come back in. Some risers, all the usual build effects, and then we go into the drop. Alright, so now we're in the drop idea project, which is basically where I was trying to mess about with a bunch of little ideas. I actually found it really hard to find a drop for this one, but this is the kind of vibe I settled on. And this is literally just me creating a vibe, and then I drag all of this into another project, which ends up being the final project, where there's a bunch of tweaks. But I can show you how the idea came about in here anyway. So I just plonked the vocal into this project, and then kind of just led it into some sort of drop. I really wanted this kind of disco vibe, but a little bit I wanted it to have a bit more energy. So I found that really hard to kind of balance. But it starts just with these with this kick and clap, or kick and snare if you like, and then we've got this top loop. Just adds some more high end, and then yeah, it starts with these chords. So these are the kind of main basis of the drop. And guess what? It's ES2. So ES2 with basically no processing, 12 voices of unison, saw wave, noise, the usual culprits. The filter's all the way down, and it's being controlled by envelope 2, which is here. It's just basically a super high attack, very, very long decay, and you get that. And then a little bit of resonance gives you the squelch, and then the distortion on soft mode gives you that analog saturation type feel. So that's that one. And then just to kind of play off of that chord and give it a bit more rhythm, I just copied that preset down and just literally changed the envelope just to basically the shortest attack you can get and the longest decay you can get. Basically the same. Actually, there's also a phaser, and I'm not sure if this is being used. Is it? Yes, that's what sounds different about this preset. So basically there's a phaser in here built into the ES2, and I'm just using that a little bit. So yeah, that's basically it. I'm just getting rid of the low end on the EQ, and I'm sidechaining it. There's also a phaser on this one as well. And then to play along with that, we've got the bass. With this, what it is this real bass preset that I made a long time ago. And I'm just trying to basically imitate the adsr from the chords so that they kind of play along with each other. This one just has 6 voices of unison, and it's got a lot more distortion. This first one's also pitching down because it's in legato mode. When we put that low note in, it's going to bend down. Processing, I'm basically just, what I'm doing here is it looks like I'm just boosting the mids, which I am, but I'm sending a different type of signal into the distortion that is after the EQ. So when you boost something, when you boost a signal somewhere or a frequency, before you go into a distortion, you get a completely different tone. So then I'm going into Camel Crusher. It's not a crazy distortion, but without this EQ, you just get more beef with the EQ. Bit of a OTT, sidechain. And then very, very similar preset up here, but again, just a different adsr. With this one, it's kind of like a short, plucky bass, and the filter's up a little bit, and we've just got this kind of plucky adsr. And you'll see that kind of isn't really holding a lot of sub frequency in it, which is why in the main project I'll show you how I got that kind of back without using a sub bass. So that's basically the main bass and the main chords. And then these cool little guitars. Just Vengeance loops basically chopped up. This one, it's got some OTT on it and a bit crusher. And the bit crusher and the OTT are just making it sound like it's been sampled a little bit from like an old disco record. It's a disco string, which I think I took out in the end and I replaced it with a different one. Part of the vocal just chopped. Just got some hi-hats as well somewhere. Where are they? Yeah, from Contact. Drum Lab, wicked. So that's the very, very main rough idea. And then basically this vocoder was kind of the final idea I put in. And this vocoder was made in Ableton, which I'm going to show you now. Basically, I would have made the main melody in this project and then dragged it into Ableton. So let's jump into Ableton. I'll show you the vocoder and then we'll go into the main project where all the other little bits of effects and mixing is going on. Alright, so here we are in Ableton, which is a bit unusual for these kind of videos. I use Ableton from time to time, not very often because I really can never find my way around it. But especially for vocoder sounds, it is the best in my opinion. I tried vocal synth for this as well and it just kind of just wasn't cutting it for this specific thing, but Ableton pulled through. So let me just show you how we did it. How I did it. I just like saying we. So if I take off all the processing from the vocal channel, we've just got the normal wet vocal. Funny how you miss me more than you could ever love me, how you could. And then over on this side, on this channel, on this massive channel, yeah, it's basically just a saw wave with a bit of noise that's being run through a classic tube and a parabolic shaper. This is the vibrato. That's just the vibrato in massive. So we've got that signal in there. That's the melody. And then on here, we've got the vocal. So you first of all adding a vocoder. And then what I'm doing is clicking external carrier and then putting it through to massive. And then you get this. And there's a few tweaks on this that I did. I just turned the formant down a little bit so it sounds a bit deeper. I put the range up to 18 kilohertz and I made the bands 28. The kind of more you increase this, the more it starts to sound like the actual vocal. And then I increased the depth a little bit so it sounds a little bit more humanized rather than too robotic. And then I'm running it through an OTT, tiny little bit. But as you can hear, there's a lot of kind of nasty low and low mid frequencies, which I'm trying to get rid of here. Bit of a ping pong delay. So yeah, that's kind of the main vocoder idea. And then what I did is bounce that out, dragged it into the project and chopped it up, because as you can hear, this is not the final vocoder thing that's in the main project. So finally, let's dive into the actual main project and break everything else down. Okay, so we're finally here in the actual project, which is a bit bigger, 180 channels. Probably consolidated down because a lot of this is bounced out audio from the other projects. But yeah, let's go straight to the drop because that's where there's a lot of stuff going on. So the bass that I showed you in the other project, it kind of is based around that, but bass. But there's a kind of, you get these little trinkets come in and out. So this is what the bass sounds like together. And it goes into this end bit. Right, let's break it down. This is the main bass I showed you from the other project. And you can see there's a lot more beef in there, and that's from this amazing Waves plugin called RBass. And all I'm doing here is it basically adds harmonics to the bass frequencies. Without, with, beef. To kind of just make that bass sound a little bit thicker and just punch through the mix a little bit more, I'm just using this preset that I use a lot on my basses. Like a bouncy kind of square wave sound. I've probably shown you this before, but it's just a Serum preset. Camel Crusher, British Clean, just compressing it. FabFilter Saturn, warming it up. EQ. And then on this project, all I did was add a sample delay to just spread it to the sides because the other bass is in mono. So that's kind of the main beef of the bass. Then we've got the bass shot. That's from the old project. All I'm doing on this is I've basically taken the low end out and I'm adding this primal tap to it. It's this preset in effect track called Liquid Vibe, and it just makes it sound a little bit more wide and chorusy, I guess. And then I'm just removing the low end because then I'm adding in this big sub, which I'm trying to imitate what the filter's doing in the other bass as well, just by using an EQ in this case. Just keeps things a bit cleaner, and those two basses together sound like this. Very dirty. At that point I was kind of happy with what the bass was doing, and I just wanted to add in some little kind of fills and interesting parts. One of them being the classic slap bass, and then in here I'm basically just I think this is the, so that's like a slap mute on a bass, like a ghost note, and then this percussion here basically just adds a transient to that so that it really punches through the mix. And then we've got some little samples coming in and out. Typical like dubstep, like yoy bass. I don't know why I've always loved this sound and it never gets old, so why not? So that's in there just to add a bit of variation. Got another bass, this one. That's a sample that I made and I just put it into EXS24. Little wob bass. Cool. And then at the end of the last phrase of the drop, we go into this more legato sustain section. So we'll change the bass here. We've got this wob bass. This is the preset I used in Don't Say You're Sorry, which I've ran through before. And then I'm just layering that with a sub bass. And then the chords, I believe, are kind of the same. Yep, same chords as the other project. Guitar's the same. Cool, we got this disco string again. And then the vocoder. This is where things changed up slightly. So I did some more mixing here to kind of get the vocoder to fit in perfectly. This was pretty difficult because at first, like, the vocoder was just so lost in the mix and I just didn't know how to get it out. So let me run through what I did. So this is what the vocoder sounds like. The main vocoder. Sounds pretty muffled, and that's probably why it wasn't cutting through the mix in hindsight. Just to give it a bit of movement and make it fit in with the everything else that's going on, I just added some reverb automation. And then a little trick I like to use a lot is just add a tremolo after that reverb that comes in at certain points. Just makes things a little bit more interesting. Right, let's see what's going on here, because it seems like a lot is going on. Got this phase mistress, which is on a very low mix. The reverb, obviously, an EQ here. Just getting rid of the lows. Another EQ. I don't know why I didn't just do this all in one EQ. Another EQ. This is me just working in a weird way, and another EQ. This gain plugin is probably just for volume purposes because I'm automating the volume here. And then to get that top end to the vocoder, what I did was bounce this out and drag it into here, and then I'm just compressing it so that it's like almost like a flat waveform with this Renaissance Axe plugin, which is really good for that sort of stuff. And then what I'm doing here is just smacking the bass. I think I've spoken about this before in maybe another video, but when you're sending this very, very heavily bass boosted signal into a distortion, you're going to get like a really clippy, nasty, gritty sound, which without this other EQ, it's going to sound horrible. But all I want is that super, 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 super top end. I'm cutting out everything below 9,300 hertz. And you can hear that. And then to just avoid any like phasing issues, because we're using the same audio waveform here, I'm just adding a sample delay. In this case, you can use something else like a chorus or maybe even a reverb, or just delay the signal slightly. But that's what I used in this case. We've got two side chains for some reason. One's longer than the other, don't know why. And together those sound like this. And that's how you really, really get it to punch through the mix. I mean, I could have layered this with a synth, but I think it just didn't work in this case because it's such a specific sound. When you start to layer a synth on it, it sounds like you've just layered a synth on it rather than it sounding as one sound. And then to kind of get the attack to punch through, because this doesn't really have much of an attack, we've got this hi-hat. Just a sampled hi-hat that's just got an EQ on it. And when you layer that with the vocoder, so together. So yeah, that was kind of an amalgamation of me just playing around with things to make something fit in a mix, which when you get to that point in a project, it can be difficult. Drums, we've got and just a simple kick and snare that I use a lot. Processing on this is, I think it's mainly for automation purposes, I believe. Yes. Yeah. Just this is the telephone kind of effect, and this is just a small room kind of thing, and then we've got an EQ. So that's a kick and clap. And then we've got these percussions, some hi-hats. They're from the original project, and then this top loop as well, and then a shed load of percussions. And then again, in this kind of last phrase, I wanted everything to be a contrast here. So super wet, super long kind of sustained notes and more ambient, as opposed to the very, very dry drop. So that's when I kind of add in this big kind of reverberated clap. And then these other little percussions and drums that are going on there to kind of just keep the energy going as well. Effects wise, I think there's a few little bits going on. We just got like a noise blast, another noise blast. Yeah, and then finally we've just got these little vocal bits coming in and out. Yeah, it's funny. Reverb's being automated there. Vocals come back in here. Yeah, it's funny how it's different now that I got somebody. Yeah, it's funny. Cool. Then we go into verse number 2. And here, like, the energy really keeps going, and it's just a lot more funky than the first verse. So the drums keep going, actually, and all I'm doing is duplicating down the kick and the clap and just turning them down in volume so that it's not exactly the same level as the drop, because I want the drop to kind of slap a bit harder. And then we've just got these other drums coming in, kind of rim shot sounds and claps, and then we've got some more hi-hats. These are go-go sounds. just random little percussions really. And then in the second half of the second verse, more hi-hats. And I believe there is even more hi-hats and shakers here. Yeah. So that's the drums for the second verse. And then we have this guitar, which is from the remix I did for Haywire. And then the bass. The bass is different here. We're using that same real bass synth preset that I showed you in the other project. This time just without the EQ on it. There's the preset if you want it. And then when that was in the mix, I was kind of like, sweet, but I just wanted it to pop through a little bit more and also just have more of a live feel to it, which is why I layered it with this live bass then. And then these little bass pops here. And here all I'm doing is basically adding a bit of chorus on CLA so that it's kind of spread apart from this mono bass. And then you get this like hybrid live electric bass, which I really like. Cool, so I can show you some other little bits as well that I added into the verses and stuff in this project. So we've got the original stems, and then I just changed up some things, like I added this snap here, just a little snap with a delay on it, some ambient sounds, this string here, little hi-hat, which is just being automated a bunch with pitch and ring shifter, cassette noise. And then one thing I did also change is I added a Rhodes sound on top of the kind of Juno chords. Just filled it out a lot more. And there I added in some kind of different harmonies to the actual Juno, which is layered on top, and that kind of just sounds nice when you have different instruments playing slightly different variations of chords.
Close now, nothing to see, but it doesn't die. Last words you said that you couldn't get.
In the build, we've got some stuff. We've got these effects here, which are from my track Feel That Way. Some rim shots, claps, uplifters. And then right before the drop, we have this kind of little snare reverse thing going on. Cool little weird noise, but it works. One thing I also layered with this vocal here is a backing vocal, which sounds pretty cool in context. One thing I did also add to kind of give a lot of impact on that very first hit was this sound right here. It's just a woo, but on that first hit of the drop, to give more impact, you want stuff kind of really spreading wide, and that's why I added this in, which is also being sample delayed so that it does sound really, really wide. On the second drop, there are a few little changes. We've definitely got these rides in, which are noticeable. And then that first beat of the second drop is completely dry. And then as soon as the drop hits, really, really wet. So you get that huge contrast and like big impact there. Second half of the second drop, we've got this cool little filtered section. Got some vinyl scratches, and then vocal drone and some percussions, some shakers, hats, lots of effects. And then all I'm doing here is I actually copied over the original vocal chop that Zed made. All I did was just add a sidechain to it so it fit into the drop. Finally, we've got the outro. Got this cool little transition. Some rides. Television static noise. And then something here that I kind of tried to hone in on from the original was changing the format of the vocal. So that's what I'm doing here. Am I? Yeah, I must have bounced this out. But what I would have done is added like a vocal transformer, for example, in Logic, and just automate me pitching this around. Then you get this effect. A ring shifter to make it sound a little bit more alien-like. This cool delay as well. And then a very abrupt ending, which is kind of happening down here with these effects. So yeah, that's pretty much the remix. I'm pretty sure I've ran through everything there. So yeah, that's kind of the remix. I think when I run through these things, they sound a lot more simple than they were when I was actually making them. I remember this one was probably one of the biggest challenges I've had whilst making a remix. I just tried way too many different ideas and I just wasn't happy with what I was making. But as you can see, with a combination of 4 different projects, we ended up on this one, which is the one that I was most happy with. It kind of just ended up like this. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I hope you've learned something from it and that you can work from different projects and end up at one finish line. Hope you guys enjoyed it anyway, and I'll see you guys next time.